my take on the Fort Hood shootings. It's difficult for me to understand everything that happened, yet at the same time I can see how it could happen. I understand how it happened. I can see where the individual came from, or like the environment that he was in, that to have the General Chief of Staff come out and say the Army is a family, and to me, this family maybe let one slip through the cracks. It's some of the information coming out, and it's going to change, or be added to or taken away from it, who knows. But one of the things was this desire to promote diversity within the U.S. military, within the Army, to have more Muslims. I met a Muslim staff sergeant in the Army over in Hawaii, and this is after September 11th. He was a great man. He was a very interesting guy, and even at one point he was observing Ramadan and fasting during the day, and I apologize that I was eating in front of him. But he was calm, cool, collected, sociable. I have known people of Pakistani descent in the U.S. Army, and I've met other people who were Muslim and from different parts of the world. But I've also met crazy people in the military, people who obviously had issues, whether those issues were ingrown, they were part of the person, or they're environmental, or a combination of the both. There's so many things I want to say, there's so many things which I want to try to frame, but even myself, it's hard to put it all together and figure it out. But to me, what I think is obvious is the U.S. military, or the Army at least, seems so focused on mission, making sure that every service member, every person who is part of the machine is up to snuff, up to par, up to regs, up to whatever sort of minimum standard to qualify that individual to say, okay, we can put you in this spot and use you in this capacity. And with Major Hassan, that seemed to be the case. Even though there were these red flags being raised, the argument that people were afraid to complain because that would be seen as politically incorrect, or they were afraid about their own political futures in the military, their own rise in rank, their own, you want to be seen as a team player, not as somebody who says, hey, so-and-so is causing problems. That is almost too much baloney for me to swallow and to accept. I can remember when going through airborne training and coming across a individual, a decorated soldier, NCO, Sergeant First Class, I want to say maybe Master Sergeant, but a man who had all sorts of training, all sorts of experiences under his belt, and he was an instructor at the airborne school, and he went nuts and had issues, and it resulted in a couple incidents, and to the point where he had to be put on medication. He was given no responsibilities, but he was still a body. He was still a person that was given some nominal control over people, but they kept an eye on him. And they had to, just make sure that he was able to do things that were assigned to him. And it was a shame to see this man in that way. And then to turn around and come across another individual who had a lapse in judgment and had some problems, but he, more or less, you could assume, got over those problems. He got better. And he was still on the short, he was kind of put in a lower position, kind of knocked down on the totem pole, so to speak, but he was still given responsibility, he was still respected, and put in charge, more or less. There were things that he was able to do. And from a short time I met that man, I could feel respect for him. For the other person, he was just so bizarre that you just really had to wonder. Now, there's other sorts of issues like, where were the Freemasons? Where was his commander? Where was his equals, the people equal in rank to him who worked alongside him, his co-workers? Where were his subordinates? To me, it seems almost ridiculous that you have a person, because in the military, maybe because he was an officer and part of the officer, or part of the psychiatric ward, medical ward, that maybe he could operate isolated, so to speak, or operate without much monitoring, and that's how he was able to just be isolated enough to have these problems and issues. But to me, you will see people with problems and issues all over, both the military and the civilian population. There are individuals I come across that they're a little loopy, a little nutty, and they're angry, and they want to cling to things that they feel are important, or that they think that these are issues, these are problems, this is how to fix them. But I think ultimately what needs to be addressed, or what should be looked at, is this idea that when you join the military, you join the army, you become an army of one. You can be all you can be. You become this living weapon, this unstoppable force, this self-reliant, capable, independent, whatever. And to me, what I noticed, though, was this focus on stress. And I think that is a big part of what the Army focuses too much on. How do we ramp up the stress? How do we put the stress on individuals and people to have them live up to these certain standards, to meet these standards? Because that's the only way you can achieve those standards, is through personal, individual pursuit. And it's almost irregardless of the impact that's going to have on you, psychologically, emotionally, physically. I saw a number of people who, because of chronic pain, stress fractures, other things, it drove them nuts. The pain was too much. And that creates an environment where people just accept that there's people who, they got issues. And you just let them be.